Welcome to the IT Security One-to-One Summit podcast series. Listen to industry insiders discuss the most critical issues in IT security. Featured on this episode, David Cass, the Global Chief Information Security Officer for Cloud and SaaS Operations, IBM, talks with Patrick Kennedy, Vice President of Webroot. You are listening to the IT Security One-to-One Summit podcast series.
Hello, this is David Cass. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Cloud and SaaS Operations for IBM. And I am here with Patrick Kennedy, who's the Vice President for Webroot. And it's nice from my point of view to be actually on the interviewer side of the table rather than the interviewee. So the security is such a dynamic environment right now. So some of the things that I've usually been seeing is that the perimeter is constantly changing. How are you guys dealing with the fact that the endpoint threats continue?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. The perimeter is changing. The old model of the walled garden and controlling the environment where core data is stored and accessed are long gone. The perimeter changes constantly throughout the day as devices are moving in and out of the network. And it's not just the nature of the devices, but it's also where the data is stored. With cloud-based infrastructure, cloud-based applications, and so forth, everything moving to the cloud means the data is federated across a much larger environment and one that's much more difficult for IT security folks to control. And so what we're seeing is a real demand for more adaptable and more responsive, real-time response, if you will, in terms of recognizing new threats, ensuring that protection is persistent regardless of where the devices are, whether they're inside or outside the network, and a demand to maintain visibility into what's happening on those devices no matter where they are.
Yeah, that's a good point. And really now, not only is data so ubiquitous in nature, where again, it's really, you have to take that approach of you have to be able to protect your applications and your data no matter where they live. That kind of looks at, there's so much available in the way of threat intelligence and other intelligence that's out there. How do you take a look at transitioning from just general threat intelligence to kind of actionable intelligence for organizations?
Yeah, that's really been the biggest complaint about threat intelligence traditionally is, okay, great, I'm faced with a bunch of new data. Some of it might be good, but I don't know what to do with it, and it's creating more problems because I now have to have a lot of people looking at it to figure out what to do with it, rather than solving the problems. And so we take the approach with our threat intelligence services, and that really focuses on recognizing potential threats and where we can automatically taking action, obviously with the consent of our customers, and where unknown objects are involved, which is really where the largest threat is now. Objects that have never been seen before or that have no history of malicious behavior, right? So that's what makes it particularly difficult when you're seeing brand new objects in that environment and very quickly having to assess the risk. In fact, we saw about 100,000 net new IP addresses that exhibited some kind of malicious behavior over the last calendar year, where there had been no history of malicious behavior in the past. So these are things that unless you're doing real-time analysis of these objects, you would never know that they actually present a risk. So those are the kinds of things that we focus on. Calling attention to and helping our customers quickly take action by blocking those IPs or blocking those files on the network or things like that.
Yeah, that's definitely good to know. And so really what you're talking about is getting better increased visibility, pushing the intelligence really out to the endpoint, because the sooner you know, the better is essentially what's going on. And then, as you look forward for the next couple of years, how do you think the endpoint and threat intelligence is going to continue to evolve?
Well, one of the things that this evolution is already happening, but we certainly expect it to continue, is the rate at which security technologies at any layer are going to have to recognize new threats and respond quickly. The days of having a list and manually updating it or getting an update every week or every month or whatever it is, those are long gone, obviously. Things change much, much too quickly now to rely on that. And so you truly need real-time assessment of the objects that are hitting your IT environment in order to evaluate and recognize whether or not they pose a risk. If an IP address or a URL or whatever the object might be was benign yesterday and has no history of malicious behavior, that means nothing today. And so what we're seeing is defenses, regardless of what layer they're deployed at, really are going to have to be real-time intelligent, real-time smart, and real-time reactive to the new objects that are entering the IT environment.
That's a good point. I think the real-time nature is very important because I think that we've all seen, attackers easily change IP addresses, easily change any kind of email associated with it. I think, you have to start looking for what are the bigger underlying patterns there so you can pick up on these things faster. So if you had to give a couple recommendations to, practitioners in the field, what would be the top 3 things that they should focus on going forward?
Well, number one, as we discussed, the endpoint has carries value in it that I don't think it has in the past. And what I mean by that is it may be the only place where data is stored, right? So that data may not be stored on a server with an endpoint accessing it. That endpoint might be the only place where that IP, that intellectual property is stored. So if something happens to that device, that data is gone forever. So in terms of recommendations, and we're seeing this in the market, which is great, where InfoSec professionals are recognizing the importance of really hardening those endpoints and acknowledging A, that they're going to be moving in and out of an environment that they control. B, they might not be corporate issued devices, so they have to embrace a very flexible approach to protecting those devices, and one that provides visibility regardless of whether the device is connected to the network or not, so that they can always exercise some level of control over what's happening to that device. If there is a problem, if there is an infection that occurs and so forth, they can quickly quarantine it, take it offline, and deal with it so that corporate information assets aren't at risk. So that's probably number one. Number two, I think, is I don't think enough companies are formalizing security training and security best practices and training programs among their employees, right? Security is everybody's job within the company, not just IT's. And that's really kind of a cultural shift that companies have to embrace with the rapid pace of change in the threat landscape now. And so that's number two. And number three, I think, is integrating the best information, the best real-time information at those key points of vulnerability, whether that's a firewall, whether it's within your SIM. Don't rely on data that's a day old or a week old. Ensure that the data that you're making decisions on reflects your environment and the threat landscape as it exists this second.
No, thank you. I mean, it's very insightful. And I think, we are now in that real-time world where information security has really evolved from the point of view, we've all, as CISOs, we've all have our baseline controls, but now the baseline controls are really just your table stakes to enter the game. You have to be able to, elevate above that and really focus on how do you adapt to a constantly changing environment. So, Patrick, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your insights.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the IT Security One-to-One Summit podcast series. To listen to other podcasts or for more information on the IT Security One-to-One Summit, visit us at one2onesummits.com/ITSec. That's ONE2ONE summits.com/ITSEC.